Guys, it's Kwana back again with another Handmaid's Tale recap and review. Hope you guys are doing awesome. Listen, I am so excited because for me, episode 9 of season 6 has been one of the best episodes in the Handmaid's Tale, and certainly in this season. We got so many payoffs, so many big events happened, so many things happened, and we're finally getting the full culmination of some of the developments that have been happening since season 1. It might almost be a little bit too late for some of these developments, but I digress. It still was a great episode of television. And if you haven't watched it and you don't want spoilers, go ahead and pause this video, save it, give it a thumbs up and a like, and then go watch the episode and then come back, because I don't want to ruin your experience. But if you've watched it and you're ready to dig in, then please sit down and let's talk about this episode entitled Execution. Now, a couple of things, because in episode 8, we've got Serena and Wharton's wedding. And of course, we know for their end, Serena was wanting to use this as a way to garner support for New Bethlehem and a way to garner more power for herself as an upstanding member of Gilead society, because she noticed that a lot of the other wives really weren't treating her with the respect she felt as though she deserved. Now, on the flip side of that, Mayday is using this event to take down the commanders. And we know that the key component to this is the cake that Rita is going to be baking. And we find out, of course, in episode 8 that inside the cake is a heavy sedative that's going to put the commanders and their wives and everyone who attends and eats the cake to sleep. And what we see in episode 8 is Moira and June's role in all of this, which is to smuggle in blades and knives to the other handmaids so that the ones who are posted with the commanders can take out the commanders and their wives, and then they can basically begin the rebellion against Gilead. And we see that take place in episode 8. Well, in episode 9, it picks up with them trying to escape Gilead. Now, yet again, we get another slow-mo running montage that I kind of could have done without, but listen, I'm going to try to just be at peace with some of the stylistic decisions that the show is making with regards to cinematography and framing, because, maybe this is their way of kind of going out on a bang with the things that kind of gave them acclaim in season 1, but have kind of since become gimmicky, at least in my opinion. A lot of close-ups of Elizabeth Moss's eyes and things of that nature. Unfortunately for the handmaids, though, they get caught. And as they are being smuggled out on the backs of these trucks, they are stopped by guardians who capture them and then round them up because they know that they are looking for June Osborne. Big mistake in letting Commander Bell managed to say her name while he was on the telephone, because this is ultimately what gets her caught. And there's kind of Spartacus moment where the guardians or the eyes are saying, which one of you is June Osborne, as though they can't tell. I just don't get this whole idea that the most famous handmaid in all of Gilead, who's been on television multiple times with her commander and his wife, and has been on television when she fled and when she managed to get out, how they don't recognize June at this point. But we're supposed to suspend our disbelief, so we're going to go along with that. She does do the right thing. She does step forward and claims her ownership in all of this, and it gets her rounded up. Now, I don't know if she thought that she was going to be the only one punished for this, but it seems like that's the case when what we see take place later on. Now, we also get Serena, who manages to escape to Lawrence's house, Lawrence, who is still awake, because he knew not to eat the cake. And I think that the eating of the cake is so very symbolic of, it's giving very much Marie Antoinette, let them eat cake, but then also eating the cake or drinking the Kool-Aid. The ones who didn't believe in Gilead didn't eat the cake, and they're the ones who managed to survive. And so he doesn't eat the cake. But you know who did? Naomi. She had a double slice. And Serena shows up at their house, of course, announcing that she has left her husband, and that, she's seen a handmaid kill a wife. And this is when Lawrence announces what's going on out there is rebellion. We then jump forward to Nick, who is another person who has eaten the cake. Remember what I just said about that, representing people who believe in Gilead, who support Gilead. And that's kind of his line in this end. He's crossed over into that path where even if he doesn't fully believe, he's certainly not going to do anything to stop it. And Rose wakes him up and lets him know that something is wrong with their baby. And so they go to the hospital. When we see them next, she is okay, but she is encouraging him to join the other commanders on their journey to Washington, D.C., because she's heard about everything that has happened with all of the killing, and he needs to show a show of support and take a stand, because if nothing else, look at what happened to her. This eating of the cake could have killed her baby. Unfortunately, she hasn't fully been awakened to the fact that it's not just the literal eating of the cake, but the fact that she is eating the cake of Gilead, which is going to likely result in the death of her baby. So we know that she's at least encouraging Nick to go along with the rest of the commanders to DC. This is going to be important later on in the episode. Then we get Wharton. He goes to confront and to question June. And, there's a lot of the same kind of like spiel of like her trying to awaken him to the wrongness of this ritualistic rape that's been happening, his role to play in it. This is not a sacred duty. These women didn't want this. You're taking their rights, their autonomy. Do you think that this is what God would want? All of this thing. And ultimately, we know that they plan to execute June. And we see that carried out in this huge sequence that's very reminiscent of season 2, episode 1. And June is not the only person who is slated for execution. We see the other aunt, who's also a spy. And we also see they bring forward Aunt Lydia, because she is the one who failed in training them. She's the one who allowed this to happen. And ultimately, what really kind of seals the fate for Gilead is that they are also going to execute the other handmaids. And they're doing this in front of all these Econo people who have also eaten the cake of Gilead and are like, wait, they're sacred women. They're untouchables. What are you doing? And so we hear the murmurs, and through the crowd, we see that Luke is there with the other members of Mayday and Rita. Now, this is pivotal because what's going to happen next? Are they going to witness June being executed in this way? And June gets the opportunity to kind of like plead her case before God, to confess her sins. And then she, basically says, don't let the bastards grind you down, just as they are pulling her up on the crane and causing her to be hung. And this is when Luke throws a grenade and begins all out anarchy, going up against the Guardians, them taking out soldiers, shooting people left and right, ultimately freeing the other handmaids. When it looks like perhaps June's not going to make it, we get to see Rita take out one of the guards who's operating the crane and levels her down and lowers her down to the ground. Now, a little unbelievable that suddenly Rita, Luke, all these people who haven't really been trained fighters can suddenly fight. But hey, I'm glad that we got to see them all have their moments of glory and battle before this show ends, because there's been a lot of like missed opportunities to use these characters more, especially in seasons 4 and 5 when they were in Canada and the story wasn't really progressing as forward, I don't think. So it was good to see that. It was a nice little moment, but a little unbelievable. And then, of course, the disbelief continues, because how Luke, who is a known crier, very emotional, is able to hold it to himself together to witness this happening to June and not immediately kind of like respond is amazing. They lower her down and she's got this noose on her, and I'm screaming at the television, like, get the noose off of her, get the noose off of her. And he's just kind of like, are you okay? Are you okay? I don't believe for a second that Luke, in the forms that we've seen him in this show, would have not immediately like grabbed that noose off of her and been like, are you okay? Are you okay? Kind of blubbering. But I will say this, shocking, but I do think it is a form of growth, because it shows that he recognizes that he can't put his immediate need to like check on her and to take care of her above the need of Mayday, the need of this occupation right now, this execution of this task that they're doing right now is more important than her, and it's bigger than her. And I think that is the difference between where we do finally see growth in Luke and where we don't see that growth in Nick. Ultimately, it goes off without a hitch. The American fighter pilots, they bomb the heck out of Boston, and everyone is okay. Now, I want to flip back to Lawrence for just a second, because before all of this happens, Lawrence manages to get Naomi and Charlotte out with some guardians. And I love this moment between him and Charlotte, because we see how much he's grown to care for her, how much he's grown to love her. He and his wife never had a kid, and she's kind of really become his daughter. And then he passes on this book that he's been reading to her, to Naomi, and like encourages her to say, like, this little girl loves to learn. We have to teach her. It's our responsibility. We're her parents. And Naomi hasn't had any redeeming qualities in this show whatsoever, like not one iota. But it'll be interesting to see if perhaps ever Carradine makes an appearance in the Testaments, and perhaps Charlotte is there as well if they don't get her out before then, whether or not she's going to let her daughter be educated. Because as of this episode, she's still sipping the Gilead Kool-Aid of like, we need our men to protect us and all of that nonsense. So ultimately, we're back at May Day. June is there dressed in black, and they have one last thing that they need to do. They need to get a commander to sneak a altitude sensitive bomb on board to take out the rest of the commanders, because somehow in all of the melee, they did not kill Wharton. And so they go to Lawrence to ask him. Now, Lawrence has never been a man who is brave and strong, and he points that out to them like, you got the wrong guy. June says, hey, I'll be your driver. Does that make a lick of sense? That she as a woman is going to masquerade as his driver, a role that is only for men in Gilead, to sneak him to the plane strip, get him to board the plane and plant the bomb, and then get them back out safely? No, it doesn't make a lick of sense. It doesn't make a lick of sense at all. But we know with television, they want the protagonist to be there for this, whatever this fateful moment is going to be. And at this point, I know that there's something that's going to happen. He's likely either going to fail or he's going to succeed, but at what cost? Because why else would they have her be there? Especially because she was almost just killed. Like, come on. I was also a little disappointed that we didn't get to see her and Luke in that moment. Like, we get this one moment of them at the stockade, or whatever you want to call it, at the Gilead's, not a guillotine. I don't know what you would call it, but where she's going to be hung. And then that's it. So I was a little disappointed. That was the one disappointing thing that I felt really was missed in this episode, was we didn't get a chance to hear or see a moment with her and Luke. And, but we got that beautiful moment where she did tell Moira and Janine, that she loved them, but we didn't get that with Lucas. Okay. And then she manages to convince him. And of course, the inevitable happens. The other commanders show up early to the strip, and he has to pretend like he's decided to go with them to DC. And really his only task or his only chance is to pretend like something is diverting him and causing him not to get on the plane or to get on the plane with him. And there's no way he's going to be able to plant this bomb and then skedaddle off of there. So we see while him take one last look in June's direction, make eye contact with her as he's kind of saying goodbye, because he knows that this means he's going to die. Now, we've not had a lot of deaths on this show, if we're being honest. Like we've not had a lot of deaths on the show of people that we've developed characters. We've had like Alma and the other handmaids that died in season 4. We had of Matthew. But there haven't been a lot of characters that really had as much character development to have to die. And so for Lawrence, I actually shed a tear, because he really has been on a redemption arc and trying to be a better person, and also being smart and clever. But at the end of the day, he knows he can no longer protect himself if he's really going to redeem himself. And so I was glad to see him board that plane. June, for some reason, gets up from her hiding place. Like, they can't look out the window and see her. And then we see another car pull up. And of course, we get the payoff from earlier in the episode, because who is in this other vehicle? None other than none other than Nick. And he decides to go to DC with his father-in-law as well. And she is now tested. that same test that she failed earlier when she told him what was happening at Jezebel's and he betrayed her, she can either call out to him and expose them, or she can let him go. And she ultimately finally passes the test and realizes that this is more important than them. And he made his bed and he has to lie in it. And so he boards the plane. I love the last moments between him and Lawrence, because they have been the two men who have been changed the most by these circumstances, but yet we see them take very different stances. Lawrence willfully is sacrificing himself to make the world a better place, and Nick did not risk sacrificing himself and allowed those women to be killed instead of him, or in lieu of him, in June. And he didn't make the right decision. And there's a beautiful shot of them together on the plane. And I like to think that maybe Nick knew what was going to happen in those last moments and kind of acquiesced to it, but we just will never know. First, we see that shot of the plane taking off with June standing in the tarmac on the ground, watching as it explodes. And that is the end of the episode. What a great episode of television. I don't know that I have a lot of predictions, because next week is the finale and we have, to figure out what's going to happen with Luke, what's going to happen with June, what's going to happen with Mayday. Are they going to be able to get further into the US and further into Gilead before things go haywire? I hate that we know that there's another show coming, because we kind of know that they're not going to achieve fully dismantling, but you can't dismantle a whole government in one episode anyway. So I think that was kind of a big piece of pie to try and bite off anyway. But who is going to survive probably this final standoff in Gilead? Place your bets down below. Let me know which characters you think are going to die, which characters are going to carry over into the spinoff, and which characters are going to survive. I will say this, other than Lawrence getting the completion of his arc, I was glad to see that Lydia spoke out against the deplorable men of Gilead and how they have been so corrupt in taking and using people for their pleasure. She doesn't fully get it, not all the way. It's very much confined to this one dynamic of their society, but I believe she will get there, and this is the evidence of that in this moment. So I'm sure we'll see more. And Serena is a free woman now. Maybe Mark Tuello will finally be able to convince her to marry him, because he was definitely down bad for that woman, and he definitely wanted to be her baby daddy. So let me know if you think that will happen in the next episode, and I'll see you guys in the next video.